Think about it.
First time saying it.
Terrible.
Good afternoon, Richland College. Hello, everybody. How's your Wednesday going? It's a dreary, bleak, bleary Wednesday afternoon. I'm sorry, today's Tuesday. Take 7. Welcome back, folks. You were listening to KDUX Web Radio, broadcast live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. We are the voice of Richland College. RLC and the DCCCD. This is the PC radio show, radio hour. Today is an interesting topic, folks. It is what's the topic? Oh yeah, that's right. It's good students. No, I'm sorry, endangered species. How do I get those two mixed up?
One and the same.
One and the same. I made that joke to my honors class. They didn't laugh then either. We have a couple. Yes, there it is. We'll kind of get right into this here, folks. We have people coming in and out of the studio. We just we're fresh off a philosophy club meeting, and just so we're clear here, the Philosophy Club Radio Hour is an extension of the Philosophy Club proper. Philosophy Club proper meets every Tuesday from 2 to 3 in EO 32. And then from 3 to 4, we hijack the KDOX airwaves, and we continue the conversation. First, let's get to introductions here. We'll start with Uche in the far corner. Oh, that's right. Uche broke the law, and now he's fighting a speeding ticket. Who's next? Who do we got there? We got a new face. Not a new face for the Philosophy Club, a new face for the radio show. That's you, Ryan.
Ryan Morrow, Associates in Science is what I'm working on right now.
Welcome to the program.
Thanks, bud.
Furman Lee, just your local groupie.
Local groupie. All right, and I am the faculty advisor, Professor Manzi. Who do we got to my right here?
My name is Kaylin Scoggins. I'm an adjunct faculty here in the government department at Richland College, and becoming now, I guess, a frequent participant/guest in the Philosophy Club, and happy to be so.
Yeah, I mean, we could say, because Uche's not here, co-host.
Promoted, all right.
All right, guys. Real quick here, because we're hot off. I'm coming into the studio hot. I got to tell you this. I'm ready. I'm firing on 4 cylinders.
Take your jacket off.
After that engaging, hey, oh, you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the requack. We are Thunder Ducks, so instead of recapping a meeting, we requack the meeting. Quackers.
Watch the volume levels there, Jeff.
I know. Jack hates me for that. So let's go ahead and do that. Final, because I'm not sure if we came to any final conclusions here. Are we or are we not morally obligated to protect endangered species?
I'm not even sure we got to the point of clearly defining terms. I think that was the entire club meeting.
I think so, too. And that's true. So what are the terms we're working with here? What are the ambiguous terms? We got, of course, endangered. And we have, of course, preservation. And we have, of course, the
Moral obligation.
And obligation. Those are the big terms. And of course, when you hear obligation, you think something you have to do but don't necessarily want to do. So are we obligated? And what is the source, if so, of such obligation? Is it self-imposed? Is it written in sacred scripture? Is it something that we just came up with one night and said, hey, let's save the dolphins? But who's going to save the humans? Okay, so these are some of the questions we're working with here. Any initial thoughts? Any lingering sentiments?
What is morality?
What is morality?
It's a big question.
Well, there was one thing that Jeff mentioned during the meeting towards the end that kind of didn't really get much response. I'd like to try to, I guess, pursue a little bit further.
Great.
He mentioned in the email as well that if there is a moral obligation to save endangered species, that moral obligation might be better described as self-imposed, as a self-imposed moral obligation, not something that we just, have to do, something we decided that we ought to be obligated to do.
Yeah.
So I wonder if y'all could talk a little bit more. I mean, I have some thoughts, Deb. I want to see what y'all thought about that suggestion.
Yeah, exactly. Why do we take it upon ourselves to bear the burden of preserving as many different kinds of species as possible? What would compel us to do such a thing?
Assuming it is, in fact, self-imposed.
Mr. Talkative over here. Come on, Ryan. What's going on?
I think that as a very developed developed intellectual species that humans are, we feel the responsibility to take care of the other species that cannot through the plight of ourselves. Because we have the power to destroy environments and completely manufacture a world catering to us specifically, we feel a moral obligation to counter that and to recompense, I guess, to have recompense for the consequences therein, to basically the animals and plants that we have caused to go endangered and struggle with survival. I guess the human sense of morality makes us feel like we owe them a chance at survival.
Yeah, that's interesting because Ryan, I think you were pushing up against this point in the philosophy club meeting of, again, to what extent, if any, are we, I guess, happy about having to preserve the species, which is another way of saying, what do we get out of it? How does it benefit us? Why is it good for us to preserve the other species, if that is in fact a primary motivator or the primary motivator? And it would seem to be, again, at odds with some sort of altruistic notion, and more in sync with this idea that, well, we need certain species to some extent for various reasons. And, the needs and expectations we have for a certain quality of life play themselves out in those species selection process in terms of what we seek to preserve and what we seek to allow to die or not try as hard to preserve. Because, again, remember, preserving anything comes at a great cost economically. And so perhaps one of the questions becomes, I think somebody brought up, was it North Atlantic salmon? Where it's like, okay, on the one hand, we want to preserve the North Atlantic salmon for very clearly selfish reasons, but by that same token, it does nonetheless benefit the salmon. So it sounds like a win-win.
Really, what is the value of our, I guess, economic cost? Because yes, it's measurable in sums of money, but that our money doesn't hold any true weight anymore.
The value would be more in opportunity costs.
The opportunity costs, of course. But when you think about how the survival of the human race no longer is dependent on, just what one country can spend or what the power of the dollar is, that kind of way of looking at it, you can't justify, how much is a life worth or how much is the future of an entire, I won't say civilization, but an entire family of organisms worth.
Yeah, exactly. There doesn't seem to be any clear overarching standard by which you can appeal. And so that then begs the question, why do we do it? Why? I mean, which is another way of saying this. How can we justify on a nationwide level everybody getting on board and being okay with directing resources towards the preservation of species if, most people, most taxpayers or something like that, they don't really care about the plight of the salmon, but they care about thinking of themselves as a good person.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to hit on.
Thank you.
Everyone wants to be a good person, and that's why I asked what is morality earlier?
Yeah.
Because it's super trivial. It's a case-by-case scenario depending on the person you're talking to. But at the end of the day, morality is what's wrong and what's right. And if I say, hey, it's right not to let something just die off, despite it not being you, despite it not having any bloodline relation to you, except for maybe on a metaphysical, spiritual level. But other than that, if I can judge you or make you feel as a bad individual because you're not doing anything, then you're maybe I should donate that $1 a day to that polar bear.
So how we justify saving species is guilt.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
No, morality.
All right, moving on.
That does remind me of one interesting, claim that I heard about endangered species and how it relates to either self-interest or economic value, as Ryan was talking about, which is that the last person in the world who's going to let chickens, for instance, go extinct is the CEO of KFC.
Yeah. So you think that is real chicken? I think there is. That's undeniable. Maybe not that particular example, but that kind of understanding of things is that, again, we become fiercely protective and want to preserve certain entities, certain things in our lives when we feel as though without them, we're going to suffer to some degree, or we can't be as happy as perhaps we want to be. And part of that becomes this sort of guilt rhetoric where it's like, you don't care about the pandas. And you're like, well, panda lives matter.
Black and white lives matter.
And so it becomes this again game of, well, no, I you're right. I should care about that stuff, but should we? Like, I still don't know if that's good enough. I mean, it's not even clear to me that we should care about the next generation. Oh, the phones are lighting up, folks. Should we take a call?
That seems to be kind of curling back almost on your statement earlier about morality being self-imposed.
I have been watching the Olympics. Love the curling.
Right. Recoiling even. But well, because if the moral obligation, to the extent that it exists to preserve endangered species, is in fact self-imposed, I'm not quite sure that actually answers the question of why we have the moral obligation. Because then wouldn't that just
it begs the question? Yeah.
Well, wouldn't that just, or at best, even if it doesn't beg the question, kind of push it back a level to, now the question is, okay, why should we impose this obligation on ourselves? Or, should we morally obligate ourselves to save endangered species? Yeah, almost ad infinitum.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like that's kind of what's operative right now on some level. Mm. It's like trying to remind ourselves why we're being this way, and eventually reminding ourselves why being moral is important to us, and how it spells itself out in the protection of those creatures that are arguably subordinate to us, at least in terms of rational features.
I think that's a really good point.
We'll end there.
Hi, John.
Hi there.
Yeah, John just popped out of nowhere.
Yeah, it just popped out of nowhere, kind of. But you said we feel morally obligated to morally obligate ourselves to do things. And I think that's kind of the basis of all morals.
Well, then why morally obligate ourselves to morally obligate ourselves to morally obligate ourselves to save species? I mean, you see, this is potentially infinite regress here.
Mm-hmm.
It's
politics sucks.
It's I think it's self-preservation actually, because a lot of what people look at animals and other life forms, like, we observe them and we recognize them as life, and by their being life themselves, we impose ourselves on them. So we would want to preserve them to preserve us, just like we would preserve, like, if you donate $1 a day, you save an African child a meal for 3 months or however long, I don't know. But it's that kind of thing, I think. It's, even though it's not preserving your own species, in a way it kind of is. Without the world that led up to the human species, you wouldn't exactly have the human species. So if you're going to have a world that was perfectly fitted to the adaptations that humans have acquired over time, you would still need a world with trees to cut down to build your houses. You'd still need a world with fish to hunt. And I know that those are your basic needs, but if you keep everything alive, if you only use to the extent of excessive, but not too excessive and beyond, you are actually preserving the environment and allowing the human species to flourish even greater, because you are not cutting out parts of the ecosystem that may have greater effects that we don't know.
So would you say then there's maybe a kind of we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Could there be a hierarchy of goods here then, where maybe you have, all else being equal, an obligation to preserve species, so long as doing so does not harm other higher or greater goods in that hierarchy?
I would agree with that. But
then the discussion turns to exactly fleshing out that hierarchy. But even if we can have that as starting points, that's
define
something.
What's excessive.
Mm-hmm.
Because our dear leader Uche, he came up with an example.
Excuse yourself.
Uche came up with an example of, if you're in the woods and you cut down some trees to make a house, how responsible are you for the lives of all the birds and termites and squirrels that lived in those trees? And there was a counter argument, I believe Professor Manzi had brought up. Do you have 5 houses already? And that's the point I'm trying to get across.
Ballin'.
What's excessive, and once you reach excessive, are you going to go beyond that? And going beyond that, that would no longer be self-preservation. That would be towards comfort. And I think that is where there's a fault in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Humans no longer they no longer worry about what they need to survive, and they begin to worry about what they need to be the most comfortable. And comfort isn't, like, if you get too comfortable, you don't survive. If you get too comfortable in your environment and you use up too much of your environment, you're not going to be able to maintain that environment.
It's interesting you bring up comfort because, John Locke was famous for having this theory of comfortable self-preservation as a right, not mere, the Hobbesian sense of bare self-preservation against violent death as, the only ultimate right. But no, you have a right not only to preserve your existence, but in a reasonably comfortable way. Now, Locke still argued there is such thing as excess and going beyond one's needs. But I wonder, would you admit of the possibility that that some kind of comfortable self-preservation may be a natural right?
Well, yes, some kind, but there's a passage of the United States Declaration of Independence, I believe, where I think it's in the third or fourth paragraph.
Yeah,
where,
ever hear of it, Kalen?
Yeah, ever hear of it?
Where
There's writing about basically it's human nature to resist change so far as to go through all the effort of putting up with something that is oppressing you or is making you uncomfortable so that you can live your comfortable life until that point comes where your oppression outweighs the comfort, and then you have to put in effort, but it turns out that you end up putting more effort in to go back and change it all the way back to where you need it, versus putting in a little bit of effort at the beginning and just stopping it right up.
I think that's a direct quote from Jefferson, yeah.
Yeah, that's a direct quote. Quote me on it.
Okay, I think I like this line of thought because that's kind of, I guess, what we are getting at indirectly, this idea of, why should we care in terms of, I expect a certain quality of life given the kind of creature that I am. And obviously, it becomes a personal question to what extent I'm willing to sacrifice a certain level of quality of life for the sake of preserving something that I maybe never come into direct contact with on an individual level. And I simply have a hard time justifying it on the concrete, if not so the abstract. Like, I know I should help this smaller creature, but I really don't understand why that's causing me to not go on my vacation because I have to, I've been giving $20 a month towards the koala bears for like the last 5 years, and I could have used that money for something else. Stuff like that. But more so too, it's worth considering, how does one, on an individual, on a personal level, justify imposing a species-wide moral imperative to protect those things that are, again, lesser than us in terms of how capable they are of preserving their own species. I'm just not sure that outside the realm of how it pertains to humans, it happens. Again, this idea of, certain animals look cuter than others, and so we're more inclined to preserve them because, again, they appeal to us. And I think earlier there was made mention of, we're all animals and we all endure suffering, and I know what it's like to be in physical pain and suffering, and I don't want to see that happen to any other creature who is able to experience that. So I take it upon myself as a sort of natural compassion or empathy to preserve them. But I wonder if those kinds of motivations have any true staying power, or if the staying power for being moral with regards to the non-human realm necessarily entails some sort of upshot for humans if we're going to go about it again consistently.
I think that what you're saying is basically, why should we save any animal? Doesn't matter if they're cute. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, or why we're more concerned with saving certain species of animals rather than certain species of plants or insects.
For cute animals, I feel like it's because, when we see a baby, we have a protective feeling over it. Any baby of any species, we're protective over them. It's just that instinct in us.
Yeah, maternal instinct.
Paternal instinct. It's a protective instinct in us. But when you have other animals we want to save that are very pretty or doesn't fit the bill of a pet or cute like thing. It just comes down.
What if it's
to,
ugly?
Yeah, what if it's ugly? It just comes down to I feel like it's two reasons. How much of a resource are there to the environment?
Again, that pertains to humans.
I know, and our moral obligation. I feel like we're guilting ourselves into saving certain species because essentially we're the reason they're in that rut in the first place.
Not always, but probably more often than
not.
not. Yeah.
You can track it because it's kind of like the butterfly effect. Everything we've done has affected everything outside us.
Yeah.
Every single thing we've done.
our
By raising
influence
a
knows no
finger, we've
bounds.
affected something.
Yeah. But I'm just not so sure. Okay, a couple of things there. Do you really, that maternal instinct, does it really apply to things like, again, ugly looking plants?
It does not. It does not really.
You think it does?
There are people who are known to not.
Do you
be
walk on
able-
blades of grass?
Succulents.
What?
I guess grass isn't.
No, because you can't. Well, you can't like
Endangered.
put cuteness to plants essentially, unless they're like the. No, you can't, because you have when you see any animal, any living thing, you see their eyes and their nose and their mouth. Then you go like, okay, this is cute.
It looks kind of like a human.
Yeah,
exactly.
Sometimes
exactly.
we are.
And that's the self-preservation thing again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Self-preservation and instincts. Right.
You
That's
just
what
get confused into being moral.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
could get confused into being moral.
Stupid
you
humans.
confuse,
Even.
you confuse your
Fools.
instincts of self-preservation for being moral or loving. It really is not.
I'm wondering if the kind of sharp distinction we've been drawing between, good or benefit for humans and moral behavior might be relying on and maybe Jeff can correct me on this, on an overly Kantian view of morality.
It's starting to sound like it. Which is, again, I mean, when you hear obligation, one thinks Kant, and rightfully so. But this idea of an obligation, as Kant understands it, is something that, rationally speaking, it makes sense to uphold. But individually speaking, it should be a struggle. It shouldn't be something easy. It should be an inconvenience. It's a duty. It's an obligation. And so, again, it's not necessarily something we want to do, try to preserve, endangered species. But rationally speaking, we feel like we ought to. And that could be because we think, we made it this way, so it's our responsibility, or it could just be something along the lines of whatever rational justification you want to use. I'm just not so sure that's the only way to slice it. And I think that's what you're implying there, Kaylin.
Just like we were talking about compassion and everything and like loving and whatnot, and just to do a playback on our conversation from last week.
Yeah, please.
Because I uploaded some questions online and I got some feedback from some people about some things and
Really?
one I have do stuff outside of this, but
I don't believe you.
one of my friends was talking about love, and one thing they sent me an article about it, and it said love is like our element of being. Like from there, that's why it's so easy to express love. Love is living on the edge of life and knowing what life is and knowing the meaning of life. So to know what love is to know what life is. To have a love for life. So by having a love for life, it's easy for you to hold a newborn baby and feel I can feel this love. To look at all things in the world and to know that what love is. To enjoy the beautiful scene of the Grand Canyon, to experience its natural beauty, because that you have this love in your heart of, oh my God, life. But to get back onto what we're talking about this week is it's all about the natural balance of the natural order of the world and the universe. One thing that made me appreciative of an ugly plant once before was when I was in biology and I learned about photosynthesis.
Okay.
And from seeing that, I was like, oh my God, I spit out CO2, they take in CO2, they spit out O2, I take in O2. From there, I can look at this ugly plant and be like, that's an ugly plant, why should I save it? But at the end of the day, I'm like, if I don't have that plant, I don't have me. So, and that's probably the way of the world. We live in a world that was created, that no one knows how it's created, but somehow it all coexists and we all flow together. So I feel like there is this slight moral obligation of us being a subset of species living in the Earth category to preserve the life that we have here all together. And as humans, we have kind of done some stuff where we've constructed the world for us, so maybe we should take care of everyone else who's living on our world.
Yeah, that sounds great in theory, and I think I love everything you said. It's symbiotic in that way. Yeah.
Weird.
I wonder again how to how long, I guess is maybe a better way to put it. So if a species is going extinct, and you know, because you know our hearts are full of love and whatever you said, we're compelled to want to save them. You know, is it merely a matter of, again, preserving their current number? Is it a matter of bolstering their number to make them thrive again? How far do we have to go for each individual species? Individual. And I also wonder, following up on that, if it ever gets to a point where we come to the realization that, oh, this species needs to die for our betterment. And I believe this came up in a somewhat different fashion, but more or less the same thing. What if it's our obligation to preserve our own species to kill off other species?
Or what if it's the right thing for us to do is to kill off our species so everyone else can live?
Jeez.
I feel it.
That'd be really moral.
I think it's actually it's not really a moral obligation to preserve other species. It's more of a logical one.
A rational one, yeah.
Yeah, a rational obligation. So instead of you doing it because you think you have to or you feel guilty for it, humans do it because we know that now we know that in order for us to continue to survive, we need something that can efficiently recycle, like he was saying, our breath. You know, like plants efficiently recycle our CO2 into O2, and you know, vice versa, we recycle for them. So yes, that's a symbiotic relationship, but you have to think about the entire Earth as a bunch of symbiotic relationships. Even though on the small scale, you know, one animal might be eating another animal.
Shout out Lion King.
Yeah.
Simba.
Yeah, it's the circle of life. If we don't maintain the circle of life, then we will not survive. We will not make it beyond like whatever our maximum capacity is, and then all of a sudden we'll have nothing left to use, and there will be we won't have anything to support us. And like you were saying, Scoggins,
square the circle.
Professor Scoggins, how they're KFC won't let chicken run out. Like they won't let us the chicken go extinct. That's true, but man can't survive off only chicken.
Man cannot live by KFC alone.
Yeah, by KFC alone. Exactly.
So would you maybe say then, on the basis of that the moral obligation or the obligation to save endangered species or to preserve other species is grounded in a prior obligation to preserve our own species and to see our own species flourish?
Exactly.
In which case, then, that would both justify the expenditures on preserving endangered species and also letting certain species die if they would, in fact, endanger our own survival.
Of
It seems
course.
that prior obligation would provide at least some basis for both of those things, which previously seemed to be conflicting.
Yeah, no, I think if it is necessary, then and the human race deems it worthy of, or deems itself worthy of surviving, which it of course will, regardless of how any individuals feel about it. I think that the human race will always choose itself over any other species, but at the same time, it should not destroy another species unless it is necessary.
Would that be because destroying another species for no good reason itself inhibits the flourishing of the human species?
Exactly. That's what I think anyway.
So what is there to say for altruism?
I don't know if this connects to altruism or not.
John, get in the shot here.
It's
Not
a
in the
It looks
shot.
so weird. Yeah,
person
yeah, yeah.
strange.
There it is. There it is.
You
Hi,
can see the
John.
back of my head now. That's good.
I like that.
great hair.
Yeah,
So
you got gray hair.
there's
Hi.
just a predicament that I'm thinking about.
What?
Kind of like Noah's Ark when the sun explodes eventually. Maybe humans will still be here. Are we going to try and save all of the animals that are left, or are we just going to save ourselves?
We've got about 6 billion years to wait for that, so I think we can come up with a plan.
I feel like we would save them.
We would?
We're a fellow Earth-living beings. Like, we've lived with them. Wouldn't you want to save the dog
KFC
that's
would at
lived in
least
your
save the
house for
chickens.
so long?
But it's not the dogs that the question is all about. The question is about that bobcat that you.
Yeah, are we gonna put pachyderms on a jet and
And
then
termites.
fly them into the atmosphere. Yeah, pachyderms with termites and tardigrades. We already have tardigrades in space. Leave them.
Yeah. They'll survive.
What are we gonna do?
Even with the sun like that, they'll survive.
Well, here's the thing. If that was going to happen and we
Wasps.
were trying to escape Earth, we wouldn't care about the Earth's environment anymore as long as we
we're not
had the
bringing the
necessary
wasps.
resources. We could
They can stay
dump
in
all the
England.
CO2 into the atmosphere. We could use all of the natural gases and stuff. Like, leave it behind.
But then again, you always have to think that if we can save ourselves, then we will. We don't have to save the animals. It just becomes the fact that we want to save them. Everybody would just want to because it feels bad not to. It feels like we're abandoning them to their fate. But at the end of the day, we've evolved to the point that we can survive the sun blast. But these animals have not. They will die because of natural selections. Thank you.
Hi, can you tell your boyfriend to leave?
But yeah, that's the point. I mean, if you can save them if you want to, but
I gotta go.
at the end of the day, they're not going to live even if they stay. Or there'll be maybe some species that can survive and
Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thanks.
Boy,
Wait a minute.
you can move there.
Yeah, hop in that seat over there so I can see you. Yeah, no, I think that's true. But here's the other side of it, guys. If imagine us going endangered, and now imagine that there's a chance for our own survival, but we're going to require the intervention of some higher life form, not necessarily something like divine, but some sort of higher life form. Is that the same thing as us protecting animals?
Yeah.
And it's not, because we have a different understanding of expectations in terms of quality of life.
But you
or of a
don't-
different rational nature.
No, but like if you think of a higher species, we've gotten to pretty intelligent beings that we can understand who we are. And
Somebody
we-
thinks highly of herself.
No, but then human beings. But if you have a higher species, they can they are close to divine, essentially.
Highest species.
Essentially. No, but not.
Nice.
I'm saying close to divine, but not divine themselves. But when they look at us, we are but animals. We would be but animals to them, right? They would treat us the same way we treat animals. They would think of us the same way. So
I see
they
what
would
you're saying.
actually ask themselves. They wouldn't even have to ask themselves whether or not they should save us. They will know.
What if certain upper echelon human beings decide that, in an effort to streamline the process of our own evolution and refinement, continuing, certain kinds of people are no longer going to be allowed to preserve their own.
It's called genocide.
Well, yeah, there's genocide. I'm
Well, eugenics.
Yeah. That's what I was going more towards eugenics. Yeah, this idea of again, okay, if you are of a certain IQ level and lower, you're it's up to you to preserve yourself. So
Forced sterilization, etc.
yes, the stuff along these lines. Exactly. Because again, it's this aspect of, again, when an animal looks at you, it doesn't know that you possess a rational nature. It doesn't realize to what extent you are superior there too.
Neither would we if we have that divine type of being above us.
Well, but that's just that we know that we are capable of helping animals.
Yeah, but at the same time, they don't understand. And what if there's some sort of future for us that we cannot understand, right? It can't be death, because we understand death, but we even understand like being wiped out of existence. But what I'm saying, understand death, we know what happens, we rot.
Right.
What if there's a future we cannot understand, worse than death? What if these beings can save us from that? It's the same thing for animals. The animals don't understand going extinct.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
All right, so we have the choice to save them. Those divine beings could have the choice for saving us from that fate. So it's at the end of the day, it's a circle.
Well, in this hypothetical, it seems to me that the knowledge that the quasi divine beings in the situation possess is different in degree from human knowledge, but maybe not necessarily in kind.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the key distinction between, say, hyper intelligent beings versus compared to us lesser intelligent beings versus us lesser intelligent beings compared to non intellectual beings as animals. This seems to me to be getting to a distinction between biological species and metaphysical species, which might take us too far off track. I'll leave that to Jeff.
I think this hypothetical could be true if we took into account AI.
Oh no, that's
I guess
that's true though.
it's
Because
true.
that's why I was gonna ask.
The term is AI.
AI. Yeah. No, because that's
Cap.
exactly where I was gonna go to. Is like that is like eugenics and everything is like where is the next question? If we stop having to deal with the question of endangered species, say we just say bump it as a human species, and say yeah we care about ourselves because that's the general thing I'm hearing right now is as humans we're gonna care about ourselves. We're gonna always make the decisions to put humans first, and so endangered species go. So now we're doing anything to survive as the best as we can. So now we're like, we got to make sure we kill off the weak ones in our population. And we have to keep striving for betterment as ourselves. And what are we doing right now to strive for betterment? It's technology. AI, learning how we can improve our technology and take our technology to improve ourselves. So at some point, we're going to start killing off the people who can't understand how to use Google. Like,
But-
at some, like, no, like, but like,
Yeah.
what if we get to a point where we have AI and like we have an iRobot moment where the robots are looking at us like, yo, the reason that bees aren't here anymore is because of you guys. And I'm happy that you guys created me, but you guys are kind of bad for the planet and we don't need you. We can make more of ourselves. Like, so how would that, so what the question becomes, when the humans are the endangered species, what do you want the robots to do?
Yeah, yeah, and again, if humans are identified as parasites to some degree, I mean,
We are.
yeah,
We
and
are
and
parasites.
playing on that, I mean, are we saving the parasites? Are we saving the endangered parasites? Is that a concern of ours?
Not really.
No,
If
I
you
see homeless guys all the
if you
time.
think about it this way, that every species essentially
Think
is a
about it.
parasite. Essentially, is a parasite. They will eat as much as they need to. If you have a squirrel, right, and who's lived out in the wild, has eaten only as much as he could find, and you place him in a bakery, he will eat everything and get fat.
I'll do you one better. If you suffer a heart attack and drop dead in your 1-bedroom apartment, after about 4 or 5 days, Fluffy's gonna start eating you.
Yeah, but then
Okay.
at this end of the day, it's not wrong. When you were talking about eugenics, right? I feel the idea of eugenics is just human beings restarting the method of evolution. Because we were falling off. We were like, oh, we're just trying to save everyone. Now that we can, how about we kill off the people we don't need and are just going to hinder us? But with the AI, you know that the only reason they want to kill us because we have become a parasite. Right? They are a force. They have become a force of nature. By killing us, they've defeated. No, they haven't defeated us. They're just fulfilling the role. Because when you have a species
Spoiler alert.
when you have a species that go over their resources, nature will strike them down.
Well,
At that
something.
point, are we going to trust AI rationality, which could be pure rationality, the way we program it, over human rationality, which is definitely, it has its faults. But human rationality would say, no, we don't want to die. We want to continue our species.
That's
But
not wrong.
if we were following true rationality, and the rational answer was that we are the main problem on this planet, would we follow through with that?
But then,
I feel
if
like
the
we
true
should.
rational, the only time the true rational would say that human beings are a blight is that if we literally are killing ourselves, right? We're
are.
literally
We are.
we're putting chemicals into our body, and we don't want any reason to live, and we are a menace not on ourselves, but on society. But there are.
Great movie.
But that's not true. That's just not true. There are. I'm not gonna. I know it might sound idealistic, but there are reasons human beings are here, right? If at our primal state, we were hunters, right? So we would curb populations that were supposed to be curbed, and we were those predators. Now it may not be the same, but we still have natural functions that help the environment. Right, so you could never reach a conclusion that human beings are not necessary. The only time it would be is
It's a really
if
strong point, Haya.
we're like a species that are not helpful at all. The only time it could be that is that when we're killing ourselves and we're killing everything around us like poison. But that just can't
Great
be.
band.
No, it's not.
No, not really.
It's not a great band.
Didn't know that was a band.
That girl is poison.
Great song.
Dun, 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 dun. Yeah, can we play it? Let's play that song. No, sure.
Um,
Yeah. Okay. So hi. I like where you're going with this. I'm gonna really sort of go extreme there. then and say it's impossible to imagine planet Earth as not being for our own enjoyment, for our own satisfaction as the species that has, quote unquote, mastered nature to varying degrees of success and failure. I find it very difficult to imagine the world without humans as being a world that's meaningful or something. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that kind of existence doesn't seem actually realizable outside of the abstract insofar as we're humans considering it. So I think if you can extrapolate from there, or rather, I guess interpolate from there, the idea that, well, ultimately, everything a human being touches is by that very is because of that, as a result, for us to some degree, for us to decide its value, for us to determine whether or not we are obligated to it. Everything seems to be relatively self-referential.
I think that there's an easy confusion made there between the Earth being perfect for us and us being perfect for the Earth, because we've evolved to be perfect for this situation. The Earth has not been built for us. So just because it seems like it's perfect doesn't mean that it was perfect for us. We were the thing that came after the Earth.
Yeah, I remember reading a comic about this. It was just a small panel about like a human being going and hugging the personification of Mother Nature and saying, sorry, we ruined you. And Mother Nature's like, it's fine. You've done so much for nature. But at the end of the day, you're going to die and I'm going to get over you.
See, yes, like, oh, awesome.
Yeah, human beings are, at the end of the day, a species who know they're alive, who know what consciousness is. We just believe that the world was made for us, but that's not true at all. That is a lie that we placed upon ourselves to make us feel the center of the universe. Essentially, we are the center of the universe, but what I mean, because the universe doesn't have boundaries and stuff.
Yeah,
But
I get you.
But that's the point. We just think we are. We
That-
have to get over it.
That's sort of like the motto of the film, or the moral of the film, if you want to call it that we watched last semester as part of the Philosophy Club's Philosophy and Film series, Melancholia, where again it's the Mother Nature is very indifferent to our individual species and really all species.
Indifferent would place an emotion upon her. She has no emotion.
Well, yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, I think that's correct. Speaking of that, I believe, should we make that tacit announcement now as a great segue? Where's my beak?
Sure.
John's like, I don't quite know what he's referring to.
Do it.
Yeah, so last November, we rolled out as sort of a pilot the Philosophy Club Presents the Philosophy and Film series, and we screened Melancholia. Pretty good turnout. I want to say we had about 25 people. And we're rolling it out again. And so this time next Tuesday will be the first installment. I believe we were watching I Heart Huckabees, pending final confirmation of our copyright agreement to air it. But yeah, it'll be literally 1 week from today after this radio show. It's going to be quite the day. I'm going to teach ethics from 11 to 12:20. I'm going to teach honors intro from 12:30 to 1:50. We're going to co-lead the Philosophy Club from 2 to 3. We're going to have the radio show from 3 to 4. And then from 4:30 to 7, a screening and then subsequent discussion of I Heart Huckabees!
Looking for all but one of those.
Yeah, but
There-
still, it's
there
so
will
much
be-
philosophy. It's gonna make my head.
Oh, no, that's because here's the thing. Quick plug if you haven't seen the movie. It's about a couple of existential detectives for hire who you hire them to take an existentialist appraisal of your life, and then things go from there. It's a varied cast. We're gonna have a little discussion about that. It's film, PHILM, and I have a promotional flyer I need to bring up on my iPad. But yeah, a nice little plug. I'll plug that there again when we leave, which is gonna be in like 5 minutes. But yeah, having said that. I'm nothing if not great at transitions. Having said that, let's return to this conversation of endangered species here in the following way. Take it away, Kaylin.
Gee, thanks. So, actually, the I Heart Huckabees thing, I can't help but think of Dirk Gently now. Because of thinking of existentialist detectives.
Nice.
But,
Google it.
yeah, really.
That's a good one.
Google it.
That could be your sign off.
That'll be my sign off.
Think
That's what I
about
tell
it.
my students every time they ask me a question. It's like, just go Google it. I don't
Google
know.
that ish.
I don't know the answer. But yeah, going back to endangered species. So going back, if as far as humans being perfect for the earth or otherwise, or Earth being the source of or Earth without humans being bereft of meaning, as Jeff was getting to it, then wouldn't the preservation of the human species necessarily outweigh all other considerations in that case? Is that the logical upshot of that premise?
I suspect it might be. I mean, what do y'all think?
It was your premise.
Say it again. I didn't catch it.
I'll put it in these terms. Is the top priority always the preservation of the human race?
Yeah, I'd say.
Okay, so then it is
Take
our
that, AI.
Exactly.
No, because if you think about it, we've done so far only to save lives, but our own lives. Everything we've done is to make our lives better.
Yeah.
Every single thing from the start of history of mankind to this second right now.
If we can come up with a way, think Biodome. Shout out Pauly Shore.
Oh no.
If we can come up with a way, and which Baldwin was that? Billy Baldwin?
Stephen, was it?
Oh, so I think you're right. I think it was Stephen Baldwin. Yeah. Good call, Kalen.
You're welcome.
It's if we can imagine a scenario where we found a way to maintain the ecosystem without necessarily having to preserve any species other than the human race, would we opt to do that?
We're killing bees right now.
Are you saying making an isolated environment just for humans with absolutely no other species except for plants?
Yeah, if the reason for preserving endangered species is for the sake of preserving an ecosystem that is most beneficial for people, and then let's say we find a way to preserve our ecosystem without necessarily having to rely on these endangered species or really any species other than us, would we not opt to do that?
Yeah, we would, I'd say.
Well, then what real obligation do we have to preserve endangered species?
I feel like that'd be kind of like with Star Trek, how you've got that thing in every room where you say exactly what you want to eat. And
Teleport.
Is that what that? It kind of like just makes things
replicator.
together with molecules. So
Yeah,
like
it gives
everything's synthetic, but at that point we'd have already found out how everything is made and how all the compounds of the endangered plants and things that heal us from ailments and those kinds of things work together.
Yeah.
So I mean, if that's what we could get to, then that's all we'd need is that synthetic kind of alternative.
So
I think
Picard
we'd
walks
get
up to
there.
the machine and just instead of saying tea Earl Grey hot says panda black and
Yeah,
white
we
male
are.
and just pops out.
If you wanted a panda.
Because like
Panda Express?
we've been working so hard to create these type of artificial things, not just like material objects that we've created with our own like intelligence, and we've gotten to the point that we can create artificial photosynthesis and artificial leaves that create oxygen. So we could essentially, it's a foreseeable future that we could essentially live in an isolated environment with our own trees that create oxygen. Maybe in the future we could also make our own animals from scratch. And when I mean scratch, from the molecules. Just, it's like a life printer. Instead of 3D printer, you'd have a life printer. You could create life.
Then would it just be humans? The only thing that's alive is the humans?
Yes.
And plants.
In a sense.
But then what? It would just you have to ask, what do you categorize as life? Because if you just take out cells from the equation, because that's not scientifically proven. So you have the brain, you have the heart, you have the functionality, you have the organs, and you have the signals from your brains to the organs to function.
Mm-hmm.
If you could perfectly create that, isn't that life?
Mm-hmm.
This is bringing my mind to the simulation predicament, where like it could be a simulation, just because if you can have an exact copy of everything you need, and it doesn't have to come from the natural world. It could be a simulation that's better off, where you just upload your consciousness to a hard drive and then everything works in a computer.
Yeah, but you could do that, and you would never know the difference as what is real and what is in your head. But if you could do this, why wouldn't you?
I'm wondering if this might no zombie and yeah, R.I.P. Cranberries,
R.I.P.
man.
Grapefruit.
Yes,
Oh gosh.
forever lost. Now I wonder if this might hinge on the kind of how we conceive of the ordering or hierarchical ordering of our obligations. We've kind of been
Oh, yeah.
going along here the whole time saying, yeah, we do have an obligation to preserve, the human species and make sure it flourishes, but also an obligation to other animals, and they seem to keep coming into conflict. It would seem that I guess it would depend on if we conceive of the obligation to preserve endangered species or other animals as being grounded in a higher obligation to preserve the human species and see it flourish, or if it's the other way around. Basically, do we preserve the animal species only to the extent that they help preserve the human species, or do we preserve the animal species only to the extent that it does not positively harm the preservation
Yes.
of the human species? If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
I personally think it's just that we're only gonna do things that benefit us in any way possible. Like, I'm only gonna keep an animal alive if it brings me food, i.e., chicken with KFC. I'm only gonna.
You don't have pets, do you?
Yeah, but I'm gonna keep
I
that
wish I
alive
had
because it
pets.
brings me affection and love. Like, so it's only.
And when it stops doing that,
And when it stops
Eat it.
doing that, I take him
No
to the
more.
backyard and load my
I
shotgun.
take him to
Oh
KFC.
God!
Like,
Why
no,
would you
I'm
do that?
joking, but like, honestly speaking, because the general essence is we're only doing things that benefit us. And one thing you said earlier that I really felt like was like we're trying to be the divine, and like that is the only thing, like being able to
self-divine.
consciously think and know how to think and create with our thoughts is the closest thing that makes us gods, because that's all gods did. I don't want to get into religious talk, but that's to have the ability to take our ideas and create with our ideas, and that's all we're doing with things like the iPhones, with AI. And if we can make synthetic plants and synthetic everything else, why do we need everything when we can create a world for us? And then from there, we live in a world where we are gods. Where I can say, as human beings,
Everything is ruled by us, and
everything is ruled by us. Everything is manufactured by our ideas and thoughts, and this is our world now,
As it should be.
as it should be. Question mark.
No, yeah, question. Yeah, maybe
Which we've
question
imposed it on
mark.
Like,
ourselves.
as it
Should
should
really
be.
this?
Because then we go back into the question of were we made for this? Were we made to conquer this world, or were we put here to understand the world and try to better this world?
Yeah, but like it's really a question that
Assuming we
really
were
bugs
made.
me all the time
Put
because
here.
we are always trying to play at being God or on our road to be gods. But isn't that selfish? Isn't that? I feel like there's something wrong with the picture of trying so hard to be something we're not.
Or that we are, or we're just are we on a road to becoming that?
Yeah, because in the end, we just believe that we're made in the likeness of God, but nobody wants to think that we're just evolutionary beings who evolved to the point that we have consciousness, but it's just that.
Except Uche, he wants to believe that.
Yeah, it reminds me of, again, Descartes' whole idea here of a pivotal thinker. You could say the father of modern philosophy, arguably. Certainly somebody who very much valued, again, a scientific method approach to things. It's because we have rationality to some extent. It's almost our divine right to master nature as a product of nature. Like the crown of creation is us, insofar as we are the creatures that are capable of understanding our environment and thereby controlling our environments. And again, it's very anthrocentric, but insofar as we are the only creature capable, creature implies a creator, because we're the only organism capable of self-awareness and self-understanding and self-analysis with regards to our environment. It seems natural.
I would have to say I don't think you can make statements saying that we're the only we're the only species or organism having understanding.
Get out.
No, seriously.
Okay,
Because,
okay.
like, think about it. Like animals know when to hibernate. Can you not say that's an understanding of the
I
environment?
don't think they know. I think it's an instinct.
I think it's a need rather than knowing. They know. Okay, they know that it's getting cold. They're aware of the temperature.
Mhm.
They know that when it gets cold, food is not available. right? And they know that when food isn't available, they'll get hungry. So the best way to preserve their strength and not get hungry is to sleep. That's all they know.
Yeah, it
So
seems
that's
they
an
have.
understanding of the environment.
That's the same process that we go through
Yeah.
rationally.
Yeah,
It seems
rationally,
they
but
have-
that's instinctual behavior.
Yeah.
You
so
wouldn't like. What if you take a human being?
Just
and you
talk
go
over them,
like,
Kaylin. You're a professor.
I'm sorry.
I'm
If you take a human being and you know you're getting hungry, the instinctual behavior normally would be to go find something to eat. But you're on a diet to look good, right? So you go against your instincts and don't eat.
That
Would you-
Take the
instinct
hint.
to look good, I think, has to do with reproductive instincts.
But it really is not. What if you're asexual? You just don't want. You don't. It's not about you, for you, more for yourself. But
What
I
if
mean,
you're just-
you have a clean bill of health, but you want to get thinner, right? You're at a prime of
Who's
your
Bill?
health, but you want to get thinner, despite everything your doctor is saying. So isn't that going against your nature? Isn't that irrational accordingly?
Okay, it would seem that animals, experience the feeling of hunger, but maybe not form the abstract universal concept
Definitely.
of hunger. Again, they have sense knowledge, or knowledge grounded in sensation, memory, even imagination, but not abstract intellectual knowledge. They don't abstract the universal concepts from the particular senses
Yeah.
that they have. Would
Would
be
it-
the
Except
distinction
dolphins.
we're saying.
Only humans can do that.
I don't know.
Again, I'm not
I don't
quite
think I
sure
can make
that
statements
you can
for
show
another
that.
animal unless I'm that animal.
But like you could.
You're the only
think about
animal
it.
right now that can make statements.
Only to the extent that you can tell
Dolphins
anyone
can make
else's,
statements.
what
They
everyone
have
else
names
thinks.
for each other. Dolphins have names for each other. Anyways, but
Those are
when you
different
think
languages.
They
of
can
a
make
baby,
statements,
right? The baby grows up
Wasn't
in the
me, Miami
womb and it
Dolphins
has
joke.
all the nutrition it needs. It never feels hunger, right? The moment it gets out and the umbilical cord is cut, then it starts feeling hunger. And at that point, it doesn't understand it because it never had that feeling before.
It
And
feels
then
pain.
Yeah, it feels pain. It feels that weird feeling in the stomach, and it'll cry because it does not understand it, right? And it has no means of acquiring it. And obviously, it'll be fed.
Acquiring it.
Acquiring.
Because the baby's crying.
Stop.
Sorry,
That was a
no,
joke.
God.
Sorry.
But then at one point, it'll start understanding. It'll gain its own meaning to it. If I'm hungry, the solution to that is eating. And that's what every animal goes through. If they're hungry, the solution to that is eating.
I think it's more like if I'm hungry, the solution to that is screaming, and then I'll get fed.
Yeah, because
No. I'm serious here.
The
Hadi.
solution, so yeah, babies have that solution, but as you grow, you know that
Exactly.
screaming won't get you food. You have to ask. for it.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I
The
think
more
that's true.
rational way of getting food, more efficient way of getting food.
And so, can't you say that the endangered species, insofar as they lack reason, they're crying out to us? Maybe they're not capable, as Kaylin said, of saying, hey, there's a real problem here with my species, but they're, at the very least, insofar as we understand them, capable of experiencing pain and capable of knowing what it's like to go without.
But at the end of the day, are we the mothers who give them food? Are
That's
we
the question.
responsible
we
for
act
them?
like we are.
We act like we are, but we are just another animal species, and we're not responsible. But we think we are because we think we're divine, or at least close to it.
Am I my brother's species keeper?
Oh my
Oh
god.
God. That movie sucks. But
Oh.
yeah.
All right, cool. So, let's well, we're coming up on an hour here, guys.
Yep.
Let's wrap it up. Any final thoughts? Then we'll do plugs and / shout outs, and then we'll get out of here. Any final thoughts on endangered species?
We should save them. I just think.
Haya says it's our moral obligation to save them.
I think so.
Oh, do we have to have like a statement?
I'd say I'm just putting a statement out there. I feel like we should save them, not even if it is because we think we're divine. But to hell with that. We've done a lot
I feel like
worse.
Ooh,
Guess I'll
language.
flip a coin.
Can you? If you flip a coin and
To swine with that. Am I right, folks?
Thank you.
What do we got, John?
Oh,
He's like, "Oh, skip it."
I guess it is our obligation to save some species, but there's no possible way we could save all species that are endangered.
Hang on, I wanna
there are
see your-
certain worms.
I want to see your
that-
face for this.
Oh,
There we go.
okay.
Okay, here we are.
Here I am.
Look at the camera for intimacy.
Hey there. I think that there's no possible way we could save all the species. Like there are some bugs that we can't even see that are gonna go extinct tomorrow, maybe. And there's no possible way we could deal with that. We don't even care. They're
Yeah.
bugs.
Yeah, exactly.
And like they are bugs, so they have life. But there are also things that are cute that have life that we want to save, like pandas. And we put a whole lot of money into saving them, but I feel like that's still kind of stupid. I feel like it's a silly thing to do, to try to save something that's cute just because it's cute, even if it has no ability to continue living.
That's how I feel about babies. Next.
Yeah.
You're a horrible person.
I'm joking.
Nah,
Sort of.
I feel that no, like to joke about the babies.
Eat that mic.
I think it's evolution's a mother. Evolution is a mother. Purely because as humans we've evolved to the point where we've learned how to preserve our lives, and I feel bad to say this. I can't make a statement to say that we should save anyone. We live in a world where, like, if you're not trying, you're gonna die, and you have to evolve and you have to adapt. And the animals who haven't adapted, I'm sorry, I can't do much for you. Just like a homeless guy, you haven't adapted in an ever-going technology-savvy world. So if you haven't learned the skills and like how to like get a job and like keep one and how to facilitate yourself,
But what if it's your fault he's in that place?
that's not. Oh, I'm sorry.
You heard it here
Can't you
first.
say sorry?
Yeah.
Furman thinks all
You can't
bums
just
ought to
say
die.
Sorry, but there's
Yeah, no,
millions-
It
yes,
is
that's-
what it is.
That's what I'm saying. It is what it is. If that is my fault that you're
It is
there,
what it is.
guess what? Adapt and get out of there.
I guess
Because
fair
there's
points.
there's a lot. I don't want to go I hate going political, but there's a lot of black people, and it's like there's a lot of very low income people who can point back 50 or 20 or 30 years in the past and say, oh yeah, I'm in this because of these laws and policies and a trickle down system. But guess what? Tough luck. Find a way to get out of that situation, adapt and build, and that's how you and your species and organisms continue to live on. Luckily, as a human population, we've continued to do that.
Yeah,
So
but
if
it looks
Mario was
Super
Richland's,
insensitive, but
if Mario is Richland's Socrates, would Furman now be Richland's Thrasymachus?
I think
Justice is the will of the stronger species.
I think Furman should have his own show. Tough love.
yeah.
Tough talk and tough love.
At the end of the day, we still should save the ones
Sounded
that are
funny in my head.
useful to us for our own benefit.
unless we can figure out how not to use them, because right now we're killing off bees, but we're learning how to make artificial bees so that we can still pollinate flowers, so that we can still have honey and oxygen.
We'll get there eventually.
That was
Will,
Black
so
Mirror
like I said,
episode,
But
right?
we
Learn
should
from
take
AI
into
and live
account that
on.
humans are evolving. At least their technology is evolving exponentially.
And
It's
our thought
crazy.
process is going
You
up.
can't expect, even if we had a species of aliens that were evolving at the rate we are, you can't expect us to keep up with them.
And I wouldn't expect them to keep us around, to be honest with you.
If we kill all the bees, that means there's no more buzz, right?
Can
right,
we
well-
end the show right now? Like never continue again.
A couple, yeah, we should do that.
Dun,
Just a couple of quick plugs here, guys. We'll call it now. Well, again, as I said before, 1 week from today will be the first installment in the Philosophy Club's Philosophy and Film series. We're calling it Film, PHILM, because we're wicked clever like that.
Stop it.
I'm going to bring up the promotional flyer that our Gabby, the treasurer of the Philosophy
Say
Club,
our Gabby.
created. Gabby,
Gabby's
our
adorable.
club's treasurer, and I want to plug that. Also, I want to shout out the Intercultural Women's Society for hosting a lovely gala last Wednesday on Love Day, Valentine's Day. It was a lot of fun. I think the Philosophy Club was very well represented, and it was a cool thing when clubs on campus do things that directly. Again, encourage other clubs' participation, so more of a student life community sort of thing. I thought that was really good and in the spirit of love itself.
Oh, cool.
Just do it.
When you guys were talking, I was looking right at you. I was looking right into your eyes when you were saying your things, and I was my undivided attention. Ooh, did you see how the mood did you feel that? The mood just turned. Okay. Well, let's just I want to say those two things. Well, let's say our goodbyes then. Hi, plug anything, any shout outs, anything y'all want to plug? It could be private or otherwise. Oh, shout out Brazilian Top Team. That's a callback.
Nothing I need to say right now. I'll be tweeting about the film festival before we get it. So look
Sweet.
forward to really cute tweets.
This is a super personal plug.
Did you skip John?
Yeah, I don't
John
have
like
anything.
pointed towards me.
Oh, okay, sorry, John.
But this is like a personal plug. I'm gonna be on a comedy showcase here in the Plano area
Oh,
on
nice.
March 4th.
Congrats, dude.
So if you want to hear more about that, I have terrible jokes. But it's more like spoken word for me.
Nice.
March 4th, tickets are only $5. And yeah, that's my thing. I'll be doing more shows throughout the spring. and yeah, your local groupie.
Where do you get up?
I perform all around the Dallas area. But my upcoming show is in Plano on March 4th. But if you ever want to catch me at an open mic, I'm always at Hyenas.
Okay.
I'm always out at near Lovers Lane at a Backdoor Comedy Club.
Okay,
But if you would like more information, you can just search me on Facebook or Instagram, Furman Lee, spelled exactly how it sounds. Furman, super simple name.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I think I would love for that to be a topic one day in Philosophy Club is comedy.
Comedy.
Oh, I can
Yeah.
definitely do. I can show you my research paper on it.
That
Oh, right
I would
on.
love to. I would love to read that.
That's something I haven't thought of before.
Philosophy of humor.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
What is
super
a sense
sad.
of humor
It's
exactly?
super sad.
Yeah, it's super sad. Kaylin, what do you got, bud?
I would like to plug some government workshops. They're being hosted by Dr. Patrick Moore here on campus. Ask at the Learning Center for government workshops. I believe the next one is actually a week from today, from 11:30 to 12:20 over in the Learning Center on campus. I believe we had a full house last time, so make sure you go and talk to them so you can register in advance and make sure you have a spot. But
Love that show.
Had a great turnouts last time. So yeah, next government workshop with Patrick Moore a week from today. Next Tuesday, so that would be February 27th. Yeah, 27th. Yeah, 27th at 11:30 to 12:20 in the Learning Center on campus.
Awesome, and that reminds me of one additional plug. Thank you, Kaylin. The Honors Academy, the Honors program here on campus, is hosting its Honors Conference. Also, I want to say Tuesday the 27th. The keynote address will be delivered by Dr. Halperin. He is an SMU professor of history, but he also has founded their rights program. It's going to be very political, philosophical in nature, his keynote address. I'll be taking my class to see it. My class is technically hosting him. My honors introduction to philosophy class, which Ryan, who was here earlier, is in. And Haya is in as well, and John is in as well. So, yeah, that'll be fun, guys. Support your fellow students who are presenting as part of the Honors Student Conference panels. We got some really killer panels going up having to do all with peace building. Peace studies and things along these lines. It's going to be fun. It's happening all day in Sabine, 117, as well as 118, depending. But yeah, that should be really great, and definitely check out that Halperin presentation. And finally, last but not least, here is the wonderful promotional flyer for the film series. You ever stall and then the thing doesn't come up?
Yeah.
Is that just me?
It's just
Perfectly
incompetence.
normal, Jeff.
It's perfectly. Okay, here you go. I'm going to show it to you the best I can here.
They don't call me Stallings for nothing.
That's a great joke. They should call him John Concluding. That was so stupid.
You can do it.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're not.
You can do it any second now,
Um,
any minute.
ladies and gentlemen, it's not.
An
It's
hour?
not loading. Wow, we are really. All right, I'll just go right here to the disclaimer. You're listening to KDUX Web Radio. Oh, that was so bad. Broadcast
Forward,
live from Richland College in Dallas, Texas. Maybe I could pull it up on my phone. We are the voice of Richland College. Views expressed on this show are our own, unless otherwise stated, and do not reflect the opinion of KDUX Web Radio, Richland College, or the speaking of stalling, CCD.
Remind me to never promote you for an emergency responder. Never.
Here we go. I got it, y'all.
Is that tiny little
Just
thing?
as I suspected.
This looks like a document.
He's showing
for
us the
Mr.
whole
What are you
Management.
email.
showing us?
Showing us the email.
This is the email.
Email to what?
Look at that promotional flyer. Look at that
Can
baby.
you make it any bigger?
No, that's
Ah.
that's the problem.
It's a thumbnail.
That's a problem I've had.
Oh, okay.
It's a thumbnail. Yeah, it's not that winning. But ladies and gentlemen, you'll see these flyers around campus. Look for it. If you've never heard of I Heart Huckabees, check it out. It's a really check out the trailer. Rather, it's a really philosophically robust film, I would say, by design. A lot of the thinkers I'm studying and we're studying in my classes come up in various forms. And I'll say this. I'll plug myself on the iRobot. Haha. It's worth the 2 to 3 seconds of dead air that for me to reach for that, Doug. I swear to God. I'll be giving a public lecture on the 28th of February. It is on the surd that is individuality. Hegel, Heidegger, and the ontological groundlessness of transcendental subjectivity. Booyah! So it's going to be a talk on individuality and basically Heidegger's response, the existentialist response to Hegel, and Husserl after that. It's going to be a good one. Come on out, folks.
Is this the one where you're going to like bag on Hegel, the one you were talking about in class?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Can I plug in something?
Yeah, could it be this camera that I just broke? Yeah.
The student government is having a spring conference on March 3rd, and we're going to have a lot of one keynote speaker, Professor Manzi. It's going to be awesome.
Hey.
And we have a lot of other speakers, including Professor Patrick Moore, Denisha Spence, and a lot of interesting people. So, yeah, if you want to attend the meeting, it's going to be from 8 to, 9 to something around 1 or something. And if you want to attend, you'll have to join SGA, and you can just register. You don't have to do a lot. Just join SGA and just register.
Shout out SGA. Shout out Jack for fixing that thing. Thanks, Jack. That sounds great. It's going to be so a lot of stuff happening. And guys, I'm telling you right now, I met with Professor Louisa Benton, chair of my philosophy department, recently talking about the schedule for the rest of the semester, as well as meeting with John Ewing in the religion department. There is a lot of stuff happening coming down the pike over the next several weeks. I'm talking an ethics bowl. I'm talking student conference. I'm talking collaboration with the art department. I'm talking special radio show guests moving forward. I'm talking a panel on philosophy and film and potentially the Me Too movement. So a lot of things happening, a lot of things in the works here. And it's brought to you by your friendly neighborhood philosophers. All right, guys. On the count of 3, we're going to say my slogan. You ready? 1, 2. Think about it.
Oh, my God. I hate you.
Okay, I was going to say it.